When you're playing snare drum for auditions, you might be making some huge mistakes in your playing without even realizing it. When you practice snare drum, it's basically just you and a snare drum and maybe a metronome in the room. And you're playing and you're listening to yourself and you're trying to fix things, and of course you're problem solving, you're repeating things, you're running things, you're working on technique, all of that. But the problem is that your ear is 2 feet away from the drum. That's a place that the audition judge will never ever be. That's so close to your drum, there's not a chance that the audition judge is going to be standing there above your drum at the same distance as your ear is away from the drum. What that means is that the decisions that you're making when you're practicing those pieces is for an ear that's 2 feet away from the drum versus an ear that's 10, 20, 30, 40 feet away from the drum. In a college audition, they're going to be across a small room. In an orchestra audition, they're going to be possibly way out in the hall, hundreds of feet away from you. So today I want to tell you about 3 things that I always hear when I'm listening to auditions that snare drummers do. These are things that possibly can get you cut or rejected at the audition, but they're also things that are easy to fix, and usually they're just things that if you record yourself a little bit, you'll hear them right away and you'll be able to fix them. You guys have been asking me for more stuff about snare drum technique and how to work on practicing snare drum. So this month and next month, I'm trying to help you with that. I'm coming out with a whole bunch of stuff about how to work on your snare drum technique chops. You can get a sneak peek of that with my snare drum warm-up guide. That's at robknopper.com/snare warmup. And if you like this video, I would love it if you subscribed to my channel, if you gave me a thumbs up, and if you wrote in the comments and let me know, what do you want to learn about snare drum technique that I might be able to help with? Mistake number 1 when you're playing snare drum in an audition is playing your rolls softer than the single notes around it. I hear this all the time, like for instance, Capriccio Espagnol. Or in Delacluse. I know why this happens. When you play a roll, it takes a lot more energy and tension in your fingers, literally, to play the buzzes in the roll than it does to play the single notes around it. So it's a little bit more natural to play a softer roll. Rolls should just be a part of the melody. And the only difference is that they're long tones. They're just single notes that last longer. So is the answer to play the rolls louder? Well, no, the answer is to play the rolls at the same volume as the notes around it. You're just listening to the wrong version. So set yourself up in a room and put the microphone maybe like 20, 30 feet away, play the same thing, and then listen back. If the rolls still sound soft, then bring the rolls up. It might seem like you're playing the rolls louder, but you're not. And this is a good general lesson, which is that you have to calibrate what you're doing above the drum in order for it to not sound right to you there, but for it to sound right to the audition judge sitting at a distance. Mistake number 2 when you're playing snare drum for auditions is to crush 30-second notes, to crush fast notes. I think especially with Delacluse, there's this temptation that when you are coming up to some fast notes, you think to yourself, oh my God, there's some fast notes coming up. What am I gonna do? How are my hands gonna be able to deal with this? And you're just like, okay, go. You throw the sticks at it and you play them as fast as you possibly can. And you don't even realize it because there's so many fast notes going on, but it's rushing. The notes are being played too fast. So literally, I have had to force myself to stretch out fast notes, to stretch out 30 seconds. You want to think of it as like fast notes need to fill their container. Whatever their container is, they need to fill it. So it needs to stretch out. And that starts with the second note. If you rush the second note, then all the other notes are going to be rushed. So literally, I usually have to force myself to play the second note late enough, and then if I continue playing even notes, I'll get there at the right time. but you have to record yourself over and over with this and make sure that it sounds right when you're listening back to yourself, because it's really hard to tell when you're actually in the moment and playing. And the third mistake that people make on snare drum for auditions is one of my personal pet peeves. I talked about it in the Lieutenant Kiji video. It's to bring out grace note figures as accents. Just because it's a flam, just because it's a rough, just because it's a 4-stroke rough, does not mean that it needs to be accented. The temptation is to accent it because it's different from the single notes. But that means that you have to force yourself to keep it down, or else it'll pop out. The thing is, phrases happen, and anything inside is just a part of the phrase. Don't let the grace note figures decide the phrasing. It's the same thing as like, don't let the sticking decide the phrasing. Don't let the fact that you're playing a roll decide the phrasing. Decide the phrasing as a musical decision. Decide the phrase based on how you think the phrase should sound. And then make sure everything inside fits into the phrase, especially those grace note figures. And again, this is something that you can fix by recording yourself and listening back. If you want to get deeper into how I work on snare drum, what kinds of exercises and warm-ups I do to build chops on snare drum, I am coming out with a whole bunch of stuff in the next month, including a course about how to build snare drum technique. I'm so excited about it. If you want to understand my basic foundation for how to practice snare drum, you should download my snare drum warm-up guide. It's all about how to break down snare drum technique into its basic elements and turn those into a warm-up. You can get that at robknopper.com/snare warmup, and if you download that, then I will be in touch with you over email about all the snare drum technique stuff that's coming out. I'm super excited about it. I really want to help you guys develop chops by installing an effective daily snare drum warm-up. So let's leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.